let's talk about this Kickstarter that I've been following. It's called Lelola Paradise, and it's for a 2D dress-up browser-based game. A game for people who love to collect, customize, and dress up. I've been following this Kickstarter since the day after it launched. I was on the Everskies is Trash subreddit, and somebody, one of the creators of this Kickstarter, one of the promoters, linked to it on that subreddit in a comment, and I clicked through and I started following it. When I started following it, it had very few backers. As of 2 days ago, I saw that there were 11 backers, and those 11 backers had raised about a third of the campaign's goal. There's only 3 days left in the campaign, and today I saw on social media that they had raised 100% of their goal. So that means in the last couple of days, somehow 4 additional backers raised 2/3 of the campaign goal. Just to add to the drama, behavior that I usually never see, the crowdfunding went from funded to unfunded without losing any backers. So whilst 15 backers had raised the $1,500, somebody reduced their pledge and then it went under the threshold yesterday. Now, today, they picked up 3 incremental backers and they've once again raised the amount of money to fund the campaign. This is incredibly bizarre behavior. I'm not really sure what's causing it, but the screenshots are going to show the fact that there are 18 backers and it is funded, but trust me, this was not the case 2 days ago or yesterday. I was already kind of curious about what's going on with this Kickstarter because its goal is an absurdly low amount of money. The goal for this Kickstarter, it's in Singaporean currency, and the US equivalent is $1,439 for a dress-up browser-based game. So a doll dress-up game, and the goal is less than $1,500 that they are going to produce and launch this game on. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. That's not enough money to do really anything, and yet that is the total amount that they set out to raise through their Kickstarter. I've been following this, like I said, since probably the day after it launched, just seeing how successful this is, their marketing tactics. It doesn't appear as though there was any interest before the Kickstarter. For instance, it doesn't sound like or look like to me like they had any presence or any built-in audience to launch to. When I first found their Instagram profile, they didn't have anyone they were following, and then when I checked in a couple of days later, they were following a bunch of users who had interacted with Everskies content, so it looks like they are targeting the Everskies niche. It's interesting the artistic direction that they are taking this game. Everskies is an incredibly popular game, so it would make sense for them to go after the Everskies audience for a doll dress-up game. However, it appears to kind of miss the mark to me when it comes to the style, the aesthetic of the game. The aesthetic, in the words of the creators, is that they are going for a cartoon look, and they're looking for vector illustration instead of pixel illustration. However, if you are targeting the Everskies user base, if we compare an Everskies doll to a Lelola Paradise doll, it's questionable whether or not they're targeting the same audience. The Everskies doll looks much more mature, more developed than the Lelola Paradise doll is. There's the obvious comparison that the Everskies doll looks like it has physically matured and is an adult, while the Lelola Paradise doll looks like it is physically immature, it is a child. There's also the matter that one of Everskies' most competitive advantages to me is the inclusion of a plus-size doll. There are two different doll body types. There is the smaller body type and then there is the larger body type, and both are presented and produced content equally on Everskies. To me, that is a competitive advantage over all other doll dress-up games. The time that we saw a similar game really skyrocket to popularity, I would say, is Dapper Volk. Dapper Volk is very similar in my eyes to what they were trying to do with Lelola Paradise. While it doesn't have an RPG, which is kind of the core of Dapper Volk, it does have a doll dress-up game component with a very stylized avatar. Now, Dapper Volk was incredibly successful and was able to raise a large amount of money, where Lelola Paradise has only barely raised $1,500. What's the difference? The difference is that Dapper Volk had a celebrity artist, more or less. The artist behind Dapper Volk was active for a long time on other games, producing art, hosting mini games on other websites, other game sites, and then took that popularity to launch Dapper Volk. Meanwhile, Lelola Paradise appears to not have any type of built-in audience. And in addition to that, it's not using the common artistic styling of the genre that it's seeking to enter. When I look at the Lelola Paradise avatar, I think of MovieStarPlanet. I don't have anything against MovieStarPlanet. It's a very successful game. It has a narrow niche. It has a well-defined audience. It's very successful with that audience. My concern or question is, if you take half of the elements of MovieStarPlanet and half of the elements of Everskies, is there an audience that can pay to make this game successful up front with a crowdfunding effort? I'm not sure that that audience, because of how young they are, would be able to crowdfund this campaign. It seems like the wrong match. It feels like if you're going to launch something to compete with MovieStarPlanet, you would need a big budget. You would need a large financial backing, which, maybe that's why they're doing a browser-based game instead of an immersive environment, because there's less startup involved to get it off the ground. Maybe it is a successful mix to put half of Everskies and half of MovieStarPlanet together. It's just that we're not really seeing this with the performance of the Kickstarter. My chief curiosity with the Lelola Paradise crowdfunding campaign has to do with the nature of the funding. There's a lot of things that could be said about this that I'm going to get into, but I'm going to talk about the timeline for reaching their goal. I started following this campaign a day after it had launched, and in the time of making this video, there are 3 days left. As of yesterday, I said to myself, they're not going to reach their goal because with 11 backers, they had only raised about $500 US, and their goal was around $1,500 US, and they hadn't reached it. Yet today on social media, I saw that they had raised their goal. That's a huge gap, right? If you couldn't do it with 11 backers in 26 days, then how just overnight could you raise the remaining 2/3 with it only an incremental 4 backers? Where were those 4 backers hiding? How did they finally manage to reach them? It's very curious that they were able to raise 2/3 of what they had raised, ultimately, in a day. It's just really curious to me, and I don't think I would focus on this as much if it was a larger volume of backers, right? If they had suddenly found their audience and it went from 11 backers to 200 backers, all backing for $1, I don't think I would be as surprised as I am that it went from 11 backers at $500 to 15 backers at $1,500 raised. That to me is just, and it is just right under the wire that it came in, because there's only 3 days left. and they can only use the messaging that they had a successful Kickstarter and raise incremental money on top of that and have stretch goals for 3 days. So it's convenient that it happened on this day and not 2 days from now when they can't use that messaging anymore. I don't know if this is something I've ever really explicitly talked about before. So I'm really big into crowdfunding. I watch these things like they're sports. I love tracking a campaign to see what happens. And there's this idea that I'm alluding to here where you can use a successful Kickstarter campaign as marketing for your product. And this works in a couple of different ways. First, Kickstarter elevates campaigns that are successfully funded. You can filter through Kickstarter to see only things that have successfully funded. So this is kind of like a macro marketing through the Kickstarter platform itself, because you're presenting yourself to people who are just browsing Kickstarter looking for something to throw money at. This audience does exist. I know it exists because it's me. I've done this before, because you're guaranteed, to the degree of which anything is guaranteed on Kickstarter, to get your return if it's successfully funded. And I know it's relying on the masses to vet the product for you. And it's just like, well, if all these people think that this is a successful thing that I should get behind, then I should get behind it too. And so that's why it's useful in one way. Then there's the other way that you get to use the fact that it's successfully funded, which is what I just described in this video, which is that now on social media, you could say, hey, we're funded. And when you are trying to promote a campaign that's in progress, you are really desperate for content. And this is great content because it's likely to get a lot of energy, a lot of interaction on Instagram, because you're celebrating, and it's likely that your Instagram followers are also backing the Kickstarter, so of course they're going to like it, and that engagement is going to help this content on the Instagram algorithm get in front of more people. It's useful to be able to say that you have a successful Kickstarter campaign in many ways. So I'm going to imply that the funding can come from inside the house. If you have a Kickstarter goal of $1,500, but you've only raised $500, maybe someone from within the organization backs for $1,000, and then after you've generated the content, gathered the attention from having a successful Kickstarter goal, maybe that money then goes away. Spoiler alert, that's what happens here. It's actually kind of weird and uncanny. Now that I've spoiled it, let me kind of walk you through what happened. I sat down and I recorded all of this on the 26th because I was weirded out by the financial activity on the Kickstarter campaign. I was like, it's weird that overnight it just got funded, and it got funded with enough time for them to talk about it getting funded. And that's why I sat down and I made this video. However, I'm very busy and I didn't have time to complete the video, so I didn't release it. And now there's been updates. On January 27th, I log on my computer to see that it is no longer funded. It still has 15 backers, but somebody reduced their backing, and so now it's not funded anymore. So 26th, it was funded. 27th, it's not funded. And then today I check on it because it's weird. Like, this behavior is not normal, so I have to keep checking it. And sure enough, there are now 18 backers, and it's pushed over. It's once again successfully funded. And there's not much time left, so I'm pretty sure this is it, but I'm gonna finish this video tonight. I'm gonna release it tomorrow, and it's in God's hands. I'm just saying, it's really bizarre behavior. You don't usually see this. There are so few backers, and I don't think I would have watched as closely if I wasn't already suspicious about this campaign. And the reason why I have any suspicions altogether is because of how low their funding goal was. I've been struggling for like the last couple of weeks to make sense of their funding goal. I have theories, and we're going to get into them, but let's start. Their funding goal when converted to USD, was around $1,500. So this is based out of Singapore, so they use Singaporean currency. So we're just going to talk about it as if it's USD. So they are looking to raise $1,500. They have 3 staff members, a developer, a designer, and a video editor. It looks like they have some sort of graphic artist doing some kind of motion graphics, but we've yet to see any real video content besides moving elements. So, that's neither here nor there. $1,500 to produce a browser-based doll dress-up game. I cannot make heads or tails of this. So now it's time for the number part of the show, because I've been making some claims. Most notably, the claim that $1,500 is not enough to launch a browser-based game on. And how do I know this? I don't know it from personal experience. I have no interest. I have never launched a browser-based game. I'm never going to. So why am I so confident that this is an unrealistic goal for a crowdfunding campaign? I have this spreadsheet that I debuted in my last video where I keep track of the crowdfunding campaigns for games in this category. And that was for Ghost Supermodel, which raised $87,000 of its €35,000 goal. So we're gonna compare Lelola Paradise to other successful games. I'm only showing games that raised over 100% of their goal. Lelola Paradise has the goal of $1,500, which is half of what the next lowest goal amount campaign was, which was Lorewolf. Lorewolf had a goal of $3,000. Now, the most expensive in the category is Ghost Supermodel, which is a direct comparison to Lelola Paradise. They're going for the same audience, arguably, on if you are an outsider looking in, you would think so. However, I would say that there's probably an age gap of about 15 years between the Go Supermodel user and the Go Lelola Paradise user. Neither here nor there. Under the outlier that is Go Supermodel is Paul Boro, which is a game that recently had its crowdfunding campaign. And its goal is $20,000, and it raised $87,000, with 1,000 backers raising about $85 per backer. That's important, because that was clearly a well-known word-of-mouth spread campaign. You don't get 1,000 backers without somebody telling somebody else, hey, check this out. And it raised $85 per backer on average. Yet we look at Lelola Paradise, which is the next highest raised per backer, and it only had 18 backers. It just doesn't really make sense to me, looking at these numbers. 18 backers at $84 per backer. We compare that to Lorewolf, which, like I said, had a similar goal amount, $3,000. Lorewolf had 734 backers at about $64 per backer. Let's look a little bit closer into that. I broke out this chart. It's just kind of a crazy chart. It's all of the backing amounts, how many backers backed at that amount, and then the total amount of money raised per that backer level. At Lelola Paradise, we see that 7 users backed at $100 level. So that means 7 users decided to spend $100, which gives that backer level a total amount of $700 raised. We could see that for Lelola Paradise, this makes up the majority of the backing, right? Most people that backed Lelola Paradise backed at this level. This was the most popular backer level. But how does that look for a different game? A game that was successful. How does that look for Lorewolf? For Lorewolf, the majority of the money was raised under $100 backer level. That means that the most amount that was raised was at the $80 backer level by 235 backers for $18,000. And then the next level underneath that was the $30 backer level, where 197 users backed for $5,910 total. It's just mind-boggling to me that we see something as like virally successful as Lore Wolf that hit its audience, that met its audience, that found its audience, and that was successful. We see that the majority of backers backed for less than $100, whereas Lelola Paradise, 18 backers, 7 of them decided that they were going to go for $100. And obviously there are some backers missing from these totals. I'm not really quite sure how Kickstarter measures or quantifies this stuff, but the numbers don't exactly match up how many backers are reported to have backed. So, I mean, it's just really weird that the majority of Lelola Paradise backers backed at such a high investment when a game that had a similar goal, Lore Wolf, saw something completely different with their audience behavior. But maybe they're just completely different audiences. Like, I want to present this to you because these are the things that I think about when I look at these numbers. And the real, like, figure behind the curtain here is that I don't think that this is a startup group of just 3 scrappy individuals trying to make this project. I do believe that they are backed by a company and that the Kickstarter is a marketing campaign. I would say it's not a very effective marketing campaign, but it's not an effective marketing campaign for reasons besides the elements that they've been employing. It has to do with the fact that there was no built-in audience for what they're trying to sell. I question who their audience is altogether. What I think is going on here, how they could have their funding goal be so low, is that they're actually backed by a company from Singapore called Safiro, or Safiro. I feel like that's very Midwestern to pronounce it, so I'm just gonna say Safiro. I don't know, maybe they're both equally as wrong. But there is this company called Safiro that is linked in their privacy statement on the Lelola website. So lelolaparadise.com, you go to the privacy policy, and they've got this Safiro entity in Singapore referenced multiple times. It looks like Lelola Paradise is currently not a separate standalone company, nor is it a child company within the parent company. It is entirely a part of conglomerate of Safiro entity in Singapore, a registered company in Singapore, although functionally speaking, all accounting for Lelola Paradise will also separately have its own balance sheets. Lelola Paradise will be registered as its own standalone child entity of conglomerate of Safiro in due time. So, I'm still in business school, so I can't really speak to the nuances of what's going on here from my business perspective, but it appears as though this company, Safiro, has many other companies in its portfolio, and it's launching this game, Lelola Paradise, which will, after it launches, become a registered child company of Safiro, but it's not like its own separate company. Like, the people who work on Lelola Paradise are employees of Safiro. And that's why I'm positive that this Kickstarter campaign was a marketing campaign for Lelola Paradise. And I don't know how it works at Safiro. I don't know if this is standard operating procedure or if they were trying to test the waters. It doesn't really look like they were trying to test the waters. It looks like they were trying to drum up attention because they didn't let it fail. They definitely, I don't think that overnight 4 backers decided to invest $1,000 in this. I do think that money came from within the house because it's so weird. There's only 15 backers. I don't know. I'm not one of them. I'm not backing this project. Here's my interpretation of what's going on. There is a company that produces software as a service who promotes content creators that has a suite of capabilities to support online endeavors where somebody pitched the concept of creating an Everskies competitor and it was approved. And in order to market this product, they've decided to run a Kickstarter and then develop the product after running the Kickstarter. That's my take on the situation. And so the product is Lelola Paradise. The differentiation from Everskies is that it's not pixel dolls. They are vector illustration dolls. They have a different style. I think they're hoping to corner the overlap of Everskies and MovieStarPlanet, so aiming for a younger demographic. I do think that there are several miscalculations in what they're hoping to provide and differentiate by. The number one thing is that these dolls are ugly. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's all in the eye of the beholder, but my eye beholds this as ugly. And it misses the mark of what Everskies provides, which is like the illusion of maturity, because the characters, the doll bases themselves, are not only stylized, but they're adult looking, while the Lelola Paradise base is childlike in features and is difficult to dress up to the standard that you can dress up Everskies dolls. If you're comparing the two against one another, they're very different, and they're not going to reach the same audience. They're not going to offer the same things. So if that was the goal, I think it missed the mark. Anyways, thanks for coming to my Lelola Paradise TED Talk. I don't know if anybody learned anything today, but I just had to talk about this. Like, it was driving me crazy. So thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye!